Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Douville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who's going to go get the girl and dispose of this swine while he's at it.
Tim Longo. Hello.
Yep. Hello. How are you?
Good. Sorry for my audio issues. I'm in a new space, so it might be echoey. I assume it will be echoey, but Brett he says that there's some fixing in post maybe, but yeah, I have not soundproofed my new office space yet. So you get what you get today. So I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. It's yeah. No, I mean I've had scarier things.
Yeah, including this last session.
Yeah, plenty of good bits in this session. But some stuff that I was like, I don't know about that, and we'll get to all of that. There's been a couple of surprises for each of us. One is I want to start with the target practice. We'll kind of like lump all the other stuff together, I think, because it's more story stuff. But I want to talk about some things that like I didn't notice were there or you didn't notice were there. The first of which is apparently before this section, there was a target practice room that I just missed. I just entirely did not see. Like when I saw the door, and I don't remember, I think it was in like this kind of, I don't know, it wasn't really an art gallery because that was in the previous section, but it was sort of a
big room. Yeah, it was a big staircases and stuff. Yeah.
Not this time for me. The room, it was like these sort of God, I'm trying to think of like French, very French style, like lots of portraits on the wall. So it sort of was an art area.
Yeah, right.
And then, you've got the merchant off of there. And then next to the merchant, there's a blue door with guns crossed on it. And I'm like, oh, I didn't notice that before. And I went in there and there's this mini game. And I'm like, it's so out of left field. It's so weird because the game is so situated in a real seeming space. I mean, we talked about it last time of how it felt like, you got this village and then it leads up to the hill to the castle and the castle feels real. And then there's just like this, oh yeah, here, if you get this merchant, of course, well, the merchant's maybe not entirely fitting with that in and of itself because he's just everywhere.
That's what I was going to say. With the exception of the merchant, everything's pretty cohesive. But ironically, this is sort of associated with him.
Right. And then and he's got this door, and there's another merchant inside who's the same guy. Yeah. And you talk to him, and he's like, "Hey, you want to?" I mean, he's like a carnival barker at that point. Hey, step right up. Try your. Although it doesn't cost you anything to do, I suppose. So it's a little different from the carnival or something. But man, what a weird thing. And I should say at this point, we're talking about Resident Evil 4, in case you haven't been following along. But yeah, as you step through this door, and he's there in a counter, and he's like, "Hey, you got to use one of my weapons to do this next thing." And I'm like, okay.
Well, and additionally, he's not on the map. The room isn't on the map. The door is, but usually you look at the map to see what spaces beyond doors you want to uncover. And in this case, I don't think the room it's just the blue dot. So it's like it doesn't even clue you completely in unless you see it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I really look for is the change in color between I haven't been a place and I have been a place.
Yeah.
And I think this session, I guess we can get around to this in a minute, but this session was a time when I was even more doing that of just like, oh, okay, I probably need to go over here in order to get through there. Just kind of starting to read the way that the game directs you. Like, sure, if you go down here, you're going to find a door and it's going to say, oh, you need the cups or, whatever. You need something to get through this door. And it just after a while, you're like, oh, these two side things that are loops. I need to go do those first before I go do the main thing because I know it's just going to send me back,
Yeah, this sequence. Yeah, I mean, we'll get to it in a bit, like you said, but this session definitely had more of those. We've talked about them on other series, but the sort of lock and key ordering issues. In that, if you're not instinctually thinking about those like side rooms as probably I'm going to go there anyway, so I might as well go there first. I think it would have been much more frustrating because you're going to get to the door that's locked and you're like, well, where's the key? So I lucked out for sure. And there's at least 2 of them, maybe 3 of those moments happen. But anyway, yeah. But yeah, shooting gallery.
Right. So I went in and did my first one, and I think I messed up this as well, but I got 24 out of 25. It was basically, shoot the people on these 3 basically tracks. I guess some move left to right. I guess. I don't know. I don't remember. I did it once. Yeah. Yeah. And I did it once, and I got 24 out of 25, and I was like, oh, okay. I guess that's that. And I walked out, and I was like, okay, see ya. And I was done. I was like, why would I spend any time doing this? Yeah. So tell me, why would I spend any time doing this?
Well, so in this era, I feel like this was another one of those trends that everyone was doing. I mean, there's where maybe it was added after the GameCube version or something, but it's like these mini games that give you unlockable. They're just trying to extend playtime, basically, right? To give you more bang for your money,
but also to prevent you turning it into GameStop early or whatever, right? And extend the play. If you can extend that out 10 days, man, you sell a lot more units, right? Because for the people who can't wait to play, right?
Right. And remember, this was also the era of, to your point, of used game sales kind of being very dominant, and it's so everyone was trying these different tactics to try to keep people to hang on to the discs. And in this case, you're getting collectibles for doing these target practices, and the collectibles are little statues. They're called something, though. It's like it's almost like the little statues or the little figurines you get from one of the machines. What are they called? Blister packs? Not blister packs, but anyway, they're extremely popular in Japan, I believe. And so you're getting these little figurines that you can then click on and zoom in and rotate, and so you're seeing Leon in all his different costumes, and you see Ada. I think I got 5 of them or something. I think I did 3 target practices, and I got either 24 or 25 on each of them. But there was some additional step that I remember having to do to go get the little rewards, and there's also some weird rule set to, like, every time you go in there, there's a new set of 6 possible. And so there's also kind of like a random, there's a randomization to it as well. If you want, it's a collection, right? It's a collect them all situation. Right. Like, I want to collect them all. So I'm going to go back in and see what they're simulating those machines, those little bubble machines.
Like a gacha.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's the word I was neglecting to remember. It's their gotcha. We
should have known from Shenmue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it was just a thing, and still a little bit like that these days, but largely that's gone away. Now there's a whole huge mobile market for gacha games, right? I mean, that's a different thing. Right, exactly. Yeah. So basically, and there's a little stand. I don't know what you call it, like a little kind of like tiered stand display case, where you all of them are, and you can go. I don't know if you have it, but seeing that I went and got a couple of them, I now have this selection in the treasure menu, and you can go click on that, and you go into this little display case, and they're all sitting in the display case, and you can see obviously how many you have possible to get, right? And it's very much like, I want to get them all, I want to fill each slot or whatever. So it's completely throwaway, kind of silly, and the models are fine, but it's nothing, I don't know. There's nothing I have no motivation.
It's really strange. I mean, I really enjoyed, I mean, for the original Arkham Asylum sort of had that, with you had 3D models you could basically unlock from different things. Gallery, and you saw all the slots that were empty. They didn't have an in-world thing that did it. And that was a game that I got everything on, so I got all of those too, I guess. But I never spent any sort of time on that. I guess I'm not a gacha game person. Like I just don't. It just doesn't appeal to me. I've never I've heard people talk about like, well, you just have to find the one that's for you. And I'm like, I don't know that there's one for me. I don't know. It just feels
books. There's a gacha game where you have to collect all the books.
That's called the library, Tim, and I'm winning. In fact, I finished book 200 just yesterday. So,
man,
for the year,
congratulations!
Thank you very much. But it's, I mean, I have a. Yeah, I don't connect with those things at all. I think it's partly the transparent manipulation. Like as soon as you said, well, there's random ones when you go in there, I was like, oh my God, like that is so transparently extending the time just because, well, if I want to get them all, I got to make sure I get all the challenges in the room. I might have to go in there 12 times, even though there's 6 things or, you know,
well, and the ones that, and this is where sort of live games and you know the mobile sort of games, I think a lot of them can fall down in the same way. But the gacha game and these little mini games, which again, games of this era, lots of them had this. I feel like there's even 1 or 2 in the Metal Gear games around the same era. But if the core thing that you're going back and doing isn't fun, you know, it's not going to have a high success rate. If it is fun, that's a different story, right? It's like, okay, if I'm just going to be earning these things by playing this fundamental core loop that I really like. And for me, to be honest, the shooting in this game is okay, but it's not something that I actually want to like force myself to do just to get a cosmetic out of it, you know, that I can't even really do anything with. It's not even a cosmetic for my character. It's only a thing I can look at in this one menu, you know? So it's, you know, it feels like an experiment or something.
Well, I mean, and it's a precursor in some ways, or, well, the gacha games, excuse me, more so are precursor to, you know, loot boxes.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And even there, though, you're only capturing a particular segment of a population, right? But I guess that could be said of any mechanic. Like, you know, this shooting probably works really well for some people and, you know, whatever. I mean, there's probably different aspects of any given game that really appeal. You know, this really grabs this kind of player. This really grabs this kind of player. MMO design is all about finding ways to engage all of these different types of players so that they keep playing, you know, and, you know, here, I mean, the trade-off in a sort of single player game is, well, if they're not enjoying the core thing, you know, like it's going to be hard to keep them. And then adding sort of additional things is expensive, and finding ways to, like, you're not going to find a social mechanic necessarily, right? I mean, it's like, you know, because there are people who play games for the social aspect. You know, how are you going to do that, right? And so there are probably hard ways. It's probably hard to extend this game to all different sorts of players, but you can maybe grab, you know, sort of collector / OCD person who needs to have everything, you know, maybe.
Well, yeah. Well, but I think the good thing about this game for me is they at least started to grab some other player types from, say, RE1 through 3, in that you can get upgrades for your weapons, and there's multiple types of weapons. And so from the completionist perspective, you could totally imagine somebody trying to just, you know, get all of the weapons and upgrade all of the weapons. You know, that's like that's a track you could get on. I mean, imagine if these, like, even if you didn't care about them, like, imagine if these figurines were rewards for finishing chapters or in some way, right? You're just playing the game and you're just like, oh, I got some,
I got this, that, and I did this. I killed a, you know, a chainsaw guy only with headshots.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Or I kicked, you know, 5 guys in a row. I don't know what it is, you know? So this is sort of the beginning of those sorts of concepts that I think just are much more mature now. Exactly.
No, that's very true. And
versus this side room that's both easy to miss, and when I'm playing it, I feel like I'm not playing the game I want to be playing, which is outside of
that. I think is the bigger part of it, is like, now I'm in a room with no threat. That's just the sort of shooting mechanics. Like, it's very strange.
It is practice.
I see what you're saying there. Yeah, sort of, somewhat.
I mean, that's how they might have seen it.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I mean, I think it is. I mean, I think it's easy to be like, well, what more can we get out of what we have, right? You know, and you know, and get a little more mileage out of it. And somebody probably was like, you know what, I can do a little thing, and made it made a prototype and we're like, yeah, you know what, that wouldn't be too hard to do and add, and we don't it doesn't even have to fit into the map, right? I mean, you can sort of see the justifications of like, oh, this is clearly meta, and we have all this art lying around. Like, I mean, I sort of see development wise how it all happens. So I get it. The interesting thing moving on from that is you mentioned like all the different ways, all the different weapons you can buy, and all the upgrades. And that might be a lot easier if you upgraded all the treasures to segue to the other side thing that we both missed.
How did you find out about it, by the way?
I discovered, let's see.
Did you read one of the
No, I didn't. No, well, yeah, that's how I ultimately did it. As I examined something, I got those. I think what happened was this time or last time I got those 3 colored gems, and it was like a red gem and a green gem and a blue gem. And I'm like, with the cat's eyes, there were so many of them when you were killing the insect things under the sewers that they didn't really translate to meaningful additions to something else, because there were a lot of them. It wasn't like there was exactly one of each. But this time, or over the last 2 sessions, I found these 3 gems, and I was like, oh, you know what? I had that crown that I've already sold, that I sold right after I met Ada. I think I sold it after the garden. But that I could imagine these were like ornaments for. And so I was looking, and I started looking at the things that I found to see, okay, well, how does this fit? Would these fit into these new things? And I found this crown, and it was like clearly saying there's 2 slots where stuff could go. Is basically what it says. Yeah. In the examination text. And I was like, oh, I've missed a lot. Which, in a way ties back into our earlier conversation. Like, I think that's another thing where it's like they don't point it out to you in the manual because they're hoping you'll notice it later and be like, oh, I've got to play this again. I missed all this stuff. Like, I could have had way more ammo, or, well, not ammo, way more upgrades.
Fully upgraded weapons, which exactly it directly comes back and relates to the core gameplay, which is a good way to do it. Because those are the things you're upgrading. Yeah.
But it also would be like if you got to this point in the story and, we're whatever, 12, 13, 14 hours in and went, oh, man, I missed a lot. Maybe I'll just start again. That also extends that window, right? Of like not taking it back to EB or GameStop or whatever at the time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you told me about this, which I was just blown away and flabbergasted that it's a thing, maybe, I'm wondering if this was even introduced in 2 or 3 and maybe, and that's how you kind of were supposed to know about it. But anyway, as soon as you said it, I was like, oh, maybe I should go back.
Exactly, right.
So it kind of works on a fundamental level. And I'm looking at one of the crazier ones, the butterfly lamp, which you can add in 6 different gems, maybe 7. Cat's eyes. It's the
colors.
Eyes.
Yeah, cat's eyes.
Colors.
Yeah. They're just these triangles. Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes from 4,500 to 32,000. 4,500 to 32,000 of worth by putting all of those in.
I sold it at 13, thinking I'm not going to find. There's not going to be a lot more of those insects. Right, is basically where I was. Is because those things drop off of. The flying insects and the sewer insects. And I was like, oh, that's pretty much the end of those, I'm guessing. And I was like, I'd rather have the firepower that I can get for this at this point. But I was definitely surprised to learn that this time and go, oh, no way. Like, it makes sense. Like, you're combining other objects in your main view. Like, I just missed it. And it's not pointing. We looked in the manual before recording, and it's not shown there either. So I think it is sort of a hidden mechanic or hidden, I don't know, value that you're likely to find if you're sort of curious about things. Like, I honestly think that this is something that modern games like Dark Souls do pretty well, where they bury a lot of their lore in the descriptions, and so you're expected to go and read that stuff to piece things together, to pun unintentionally. Where you're like uncovering more about the world and more about what's going on, and even mechanical things from reading the item descriptions and being really, really deeply understanding what's going on. That's something that goes all the way back even to Demon Souls to some degree, with some of the side quests and characters that are not immediately apparent. Like there's some weird stuff in that game that you have to really pay attention for. And that seems like a similar thing here, that it's almost something in that, that's sort of descended from that in some ways.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's coming from some of that old, because the Souls games are also coming from that sort of older legacy of unforgiving video games in a way, right? And the mastering of that or something,
right.
Like even back to arcade games and sort of the tricks and things that Easter eggs or whatever that you find. I mean, I feel like the other direction that modern games go with this these days is that I think that they tend to also, I'm thinking of maybe some really like standard examples, though I'm not an Assassin's Creed player, I could imagine it being an Assassin's Creed game, but it's sort of like, seems like something that they should have taught you about, and then, because I don't know, I feel like as a developer, I'd like people to engage in something like this, and to play the whole game and not know about it seems, I don't know. But I don't know if there's definitely different ways to think about that. But
there are other ways that, you also think about like, but it has more and more discovery, like it's deeper than you think, and like there's some stuff that's somewhat surfacey, this meta game of going and doing the shootouts or whatever. And I was going to say turkey shoots just because it's Thanksgiving week, but like going in target practice, and this feels like a hidden depth. Like we talked last time, or maybe the time before, in response to Sam's letter, about how there's a hidden system where it's like you want to keep your ammo low before you go work with them, talk to the merchant and buy an upgrade, because if you buy the capacity upgrade, you'll get a bunch of free bullets. He throws in the bullets for free, and it's just one of those hidden things that once you discover it, you have the reaction that you did, which is like, ooh, should I play this again? Like, how much will it change what I play? I mean, it's also, finding like that if I go off the beaten path, there's way more enemies out there. And it's like, oh, like, should I be doing that too?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a cavern in this section where there was a ton of those flying versions of the bugs. And I was like, of the parasite. And I was like, do these just spawn? Like, indefinitely?
I had that same thought too.
And I'm just standing there and I'm like shooting things out of the air and like, okay, I'm winning. Like every time I shoot one, often when I shoot one, I'm getting something. Like, so I'm using some handgun ammo. I'm getting some handgun ammo. It's like, is this a good trade-off for me? Do I want to stay here for a while? So there's always that, like, as players of games, like we're looking for that advantage of like, what if I went back through this and, now knowing that I can put more things into the butterfly lamp, maybe I just hold back every color a little bit. And I don't, it's really, it does honestly make me want to play it again, to just like have that experience of like, what if I did it all? Anyway.
Yeah. Well, and the other on the numbers of enemies, the stat, because they give you that stat at the end of each chapter, there's definitely chapters where you can't go back, right? Or there's moments rather that you can't go back. And so if you're trying to maximize that stat and get it as, get 100% on that, then you really need to play the game multiple times, I would assume, to really know where those point of no return moments are, to make sure that you don't miss the opportunity, because they definitely lock you out of
I mean, for me, the thing that happened was I got playing it again on the PS4. I got to the lake and I crossed the lake. I killed the monster in the lake, And then I didn't go back to the lake to go to the merchant. And after that, after I got through that whole thing, I was like, oh man, I'd have to go all the way back through to get to the motorboat to get to the merchant. And I was like, that is I don't want to spend my time doing that. So I didn't. But I also knew from playing on the GameCube version, but I missed all those barrels. He had a ton of barrels and stuff, and maybe even some treasure chests or something. I don't remember what he had, but like all around that shop, in that lake shop, there was all these barrels with good stuff in it. And I was like, oh, but I missed out on all of that.
Yeah.
So I was like, I was totally torn. And if that had been the week before, when I like switched platforms, and not last week when I was like, I have too much to do, like I can't possibly do this and go all the way back through this to get to that point, I need to push on, I might have, like, I don't know, there's something very like engaging about finding something late and going, oh, that recontextualizes a lot of what I've seen. Do I just want to try it again? I don't know. There's something that feels very Japanese game to me to some degree. Like that feels like something you might find in Zelda where you're like, oh my God, that does what? Like, I'm going to say like Link to the Past, where you can fly around with that bird or something. You're like, I can do what now? Like, oh my God, like, do I, like, and then you're starting to think, well, what can I do with these boots or this boomerang or this, just like, what have I missed? And that is, I think, a very, I don't know, Eastern approach to game design. Historically.
And they want that, like you said.
Yeah.
I mean, they want you to want to replay, or, I mean, again, it's like a different era where you have this game that you want to milk everything you can from, and just, and
as opposed to having a library of 200 games, or whatever I have on Steam.
Yeah. Or, the more becoming dominant approach these days is like we talked about, the live game, where you're sort of like, it's not about necessarily the completionist. It's more of like, I'm going to keep playing into the future, because there's always going to be something new, rather than I need to do everything to 100%. So it's, I don't know, it's just weird. Things have gotten so different, and luckily there's still some of these sorts of games being made, especially in indie space, luckily. So so we haven't lost this kind of concept, but
I mean, even the Arcanes of the world are making, I mean, they're making a different sort of game, but they have a lot of depth and stuff that you can discover and find, and, in Dishonored, the Dishonored games, and like that has that's a game that has a good replay value, both the 1 and 2. And I haven't gone back to replay Prey, but like, every time I think about it, I was like, God, I still got to play that Moon Crash thing. Like, I really want to play that, So it's like, it's got its hooks in me, and I think that that's a very similar sort of feel. It's just not, it's not in this way, and you know what I mean? Like, this is a very weird, like, oh, there's this thing I missed. Let me go back and do it with this thing I missed. I feel like Western developers are more like, here are the things, choose A or B,
Yeah.
And you want to really push hard on A. You really want to be Paragon, or whatever the other one was, and you really want to, Renegade. In Fallout 3, is the same way. You want high karma, or you want positive karma or negative karma. You want and you want chaos or order, or whatever it's called in the in Dishonored. And so it's I think we take a different tack. And I don't know, it's interesting. I mean, it definitely is like it has a different pull. It's hard to get to the end of a game, but like, I played 30 hours of Mass Effect 2 as a Paragon. Am I really going to go back and play as a Renegade?
Yeah.
God, that's an awful lot to do, right? Whereas this is like, well, it's like 15 hours and I skipped some stuff and I only discovered late I could do this one thing. What if I just replayed the same game, but knowing what I know now, So I don't know. It's just, it's a different thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, like I said, the notion came to me when you mentioned it. And so it does work on me somewhat or almost did, but obviously I won't. But and I don't have the time. But I mean, I think I said this a couple episodes ago. This game has been so frictionless for me, and I look forward to playing it, and I enjoy playing it, and I can totally imagine myself, knowing what I know now, like you said, going back and replaying it. I would completely play, I think, not maybe completely differently, but I would be way more confident, of course, right? And and less afraid of certain enemies and things like that, and kind of feel like you're almost min-maxing, right? Like shoot him in the leg and kick or suplex or whatever. And a lot of those sorts of strategies that you just you become a master.
I did have some suplexes this time because I was specifically trying to watch out for the opportunity. And the El Gigantes, and now we should start moving into the the sort of stuff we played. That lava room with the El Gigantes in it, I was less afraid of them. I actually playing back through last week, I actually managed to drop the rock on the El Gigante's head that they wanted you to do. And it basically like shortcuts a step, like it drops on its head and the thing pops out so you can jump on its back and stab it a bunch. And there's probably more than one, but I was like, oh, cool, I did it once. And it was mostly because the controls are a little bit easier, a little more forgiving. Like I said last week, I got through the tram really easily, and etc. It's funny, this time I thought they were trying to set me up for something different with the El Gigantes, which was climb up on this thing, slide down, and kick them into the lava. Did you have that feeling?
No, I mean, I thought maybe that there was a way to drop down on their back or something, but it seemed so canned that I kind of decided that wasn't a thing. It might be because I opened the thing so quickly. I was like, oh, they probably just want me to open that when they're on top of it. No, I didn't think about that. No,
I went the other way. I was like, oh, I've got this thing open. Let me lure them over so I can kick them over into the lava. Was totally my thought, I'm probably skipping ahead quite a bit because I think we had a fair amount to get to that point.
There was the lava room. There was the big lava room. You want to talk? I think that was pretty early in the session because we basically played all of chapter 4 this time. There was the fast travel carts on the track.
That was a case where I went back and had to go turn around and go back again for sure. Where I was like, oh, I shouldn't have come this way. I clearly needed to do more on the other end of this track, and I took it all the way around and went all the way back. Yeah.
There's also even the sort of the weird. Not weird, but the sort of nemesis boss section with QTEs that you can't kill the guy in the hallways.
Oh, okay. That's before El Gigante. Okay, yeah, we should hit those first then because I was just
but you mentioned the lava room you wanted in pre-show. You want to talk about that, and I assume you're talking about the brackets that you're supposed to destroy. Maybe
I meant the El Gigante actually.
Oh, got it. Okay,
because that's lava under the floor. So why don't you take me through the other lava room?
Oh well, there's which I thought early in the chapter there's a separate lava room that's full of lava, and you're walking on these walkways, and there's these dragons that breathe fire at you that are kind of manned by some of the enemies.
Okay, that's the room you meant. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and then some weapons you can break the well, at least that's what I found out. Some weapons you can break the brackets and some you can't. And so I was a little surprised or confused at that for a bit until I used more powerful weapons to break brackets. But
I did. I took that room totally differently.
Interesting.
I went up, so once they started spewing fire down, so this is a room where there's a lava floor, there's these up and down dragons that are kind of moving back and forth. They basically follow you. However, and then there's one at the end, which was really hard to deal with.
Yeah.
So for me, I went all the way back. I basically timed it. Like I led them as far as they would go. Then I ran back the other way, and then I shot the guy who was manning the thing.
Right, and then it falls by itself at that point.
He falls, and the whole thing falls. And then I do the same thing to the next one. But then you get to the end, and you don't have a shot.
Yeah. Right.
I was like, oh man, what am I going to do? I have a rocket launcher. So I just fired that thing right into its mouth, and the whole thing came down. And because it killed him with the area of effect damage.
Oh wow, cool! I have yet to use a rocket launcher actually.
Yeah, I mean that's the only thing I used it for. I don't know that I bought it.
There's one you pick up. Yeah, there's one.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, I don't think I would have spent money on that, but that's what I used it on.
How funny. Yeah. So there's a little bit of puzzle. I mean, the funny thing about that room, and then we can move on, is that on the map, it looks like a side room. It looks like a non-critical room, but I think it is one of those situations where the key you get from there is required for
it's like the Queen's Cup maybe, or
yeah. So you have to do it, but it doesn't, you could have not, it's a side path. So you could have not done it, I think, and then gotten to that door and then realized you have to go back. So,
right. You get one of the pieces of the chimera, I think. Yeah,
maybe
in that chest. Yeah. That was the thing that I went away from and had to come back to, because I took that long path. And I was like, oh, I'm back in the entry room again. That's weird. And I can't get through this door. And I had two other pieces. Like, oh, I missed this. I must have missed something, and I went back. So yeah, I definitely had that moment. Yeah. So yeah, a lot more lava. You actually also leave her there at that point. You have to cross this thing on this machine, and you're just like, and you just leave her.
Which is which seemed weird, because that's like not a thing. They really discourage you from doing that in all other cases. So it's a bit odd that they force that to happen in that way. It felt like they're breaking their own rules there, but yeah. It
would be like leaving her in eco, like. Yeah, that you just don't do that. But there are places you can, and it's not really signaled well that you can. It was a strange thing. I was just like, really? You're gonna be okay here? I expected her to jump on that machine with me, at that point. So it was definitely a strange thing.
Or I thought that I was going to have to cover her while from the other side, right? Like,
right.
They're going to come after her, and you have to come back, and I don't know, But anyway, a little bit weird there, yeah. But then, then I guess one of the next big chunks, because we're following the little guy,
Salazar.
Throughout this whole level, obviously, and one of his henchmen breaks off and becomes essentially a nemesis kind of enemy in the sewer sort of section, or not sewers, but it's like a maintenance section.
That's a weird idea. It's like, it's below the castle, but it's more modern than the castle. It's a very
Well, there's also,
it's probably part of a mining operation or something like that. I'm sure it.
There's actually
sort of ties in, I guess.
It might, yeah. There's actually a mine key you get at some, and there's mine cars, of course. So it's not completely consistent all the time, because you also find this ancient tomb section that's really old,
right?
So I think some of the notes you find kind of give you a sense of the history of the castle. So it's maybe a little bit justified, but that's it's still Resident Evil. They don't care.
They don't really care
perfectly
but also,
about everything, but it is better than usual.
That's also Europe, though, right? That is very European. It's like you go and it's like under the opera, there's, the river and the boats and everything. But like, 2 streets over, that, it might be the catacombs, and, and go another couple streets over, and it's like, oh no, a factory literally dug down into the ground here.
Yeah.
So like, it also kind of makes sense.
Layers of history,
thematically, in a way that it doesn't in Japan, because it's an island, and B, it's an island that has a lot of earthquakes, and so a lot of their architecture is either like really sturdy or really temporary. Like there's not a lot of middle ground. So at least in history, not so much today, obviously, but historically, which is very different from Europe. So. Yeah, it's wild. I mean, it's just such a weird thing. I often wonder, and I'll ask you as a designer, like, do you like keep an eye out for like periods and locations and ideas that are like, oh, we could cram in we could have a lava level and an ice level. Like, do you think in those terms, of like, how can you juxtapose the variety that sort of modern gamers expect?
Yeah, I mean, I think so generally. Do you mean in the same level, or do you mean in the
Well, no, I just mean like in the same game. It's we've got to have the
yeah. I mean, yeah. I can't say too much, but that's definitely on my mind even today for sure. About how we sort of variety basically, right? And how do you justify variety to still fit within the not necessarily just fiction, but fiction's part of it, but just fit within the franchise. It's like, these three give you good variety, but they also kind of work for what we're doing. You kind of want to try to. I don't know. I try to do both. I try to have it make sense, but have the variety too.
Because I mean, it's a very different. As a programmer, it's a very different perspective. I'm like, how can I build a very small amount of stuff that you can use a lot of different ways? Right? And so I'm not thinking about like, how can I take something that has all these other things in it? I'm like, how can I make the smallest, simplest thing that is very flexible, it's a very different sort of way to think about it. So,
but I mean, you were asking sort of a level design question there, but on the system design side, I do think it's closer to programming in that way, right? Because systems design, I think, is about making, in my opinion, smaller, elegant systems that can do a lot of different things in an interesting way, right? So
sure.
I think that that's a sort of contrasting partner to level design in that way. That's why those two disciplines are so interesting to me, because they can be fairly different.
Yeah, and this game is a lot lighter, I think, on systemic sort of design.
Right.
There's some with the economy of weapons and like buying and selling things and combining things and, upgrades and et cetera. But, it's not a huge systemic difference from earlier Resident Evils. But it really, really nails, well, I guess the movement and stuff is sort of a system in itself that is really growing out, the previous games. So, yeah, it's interesting. And the level design is extremely good, in my opinion. Most of the places.
It's very good. I think the system that I've appreciated in the game that goes well with the level design is really the AI systems and just how the AI are, the different different actions basically that the AI have, right? Where there's sidestepping and slowly walking and then sprinting and then shooting them in the knee or whatever, and then different types of. So I feel like that they've really leveraged their enemy set quite well, and in certain levels. There was actually one in this chapter that I really liked. I'm blanking on where it was, but good sort of use of it was maybe that little mining area. Good use of levels.
Where the chainsaw guy comes in.
Yeah, and you're kind of using levels, and there's ladder, and you kind of can bottleneck them, and there's a couple loops and things. So, but any of those, as I've said in previous episodes, any of those sorts of mini arenas are really, I think, where the game shines for me. For sure.
Yeah, they get a lot of mileage out of it for sure, and that's really good level design most of the times with good enemy placement and thoughtfulness about that. I mean that room in particular was not challenging for me. And I don't know if it's just I knew actually going in there, I was like, there's a chainsaw guy here. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, like, as I even was walking around, I'd taken out the first few guys, and I was like, okay, where would I put the chainsaw guy? Like, if I were making this room, and I was like going up around where there's a switch that basically triggers the whole thing. I was like, okay, so it's all rock here. So he's not coming here. So he's got to be coming from down below. And I was like, you know what? I'm glad I bought that semi-auto assault rifle, because, it's not going to be hard from up here. And indeed it was not. I was very pleased. I was very happy with that. Let's talk about that enemy, that very QTE driven enemy.
Yeah.
You said, that detached from Salazar, I guess, was one of his two.
Robed
entities. Whatever's. Yeah.
I actually thought that they were that was just an insect creature with a robe on, but I guess it's really not. It's some completely different creature. because you see him without the robe in this sequence. So
right.
Yeah, I don't know. These are just These are.
It wasn't my favorite section. No. the area with it was mostly because I had a hard time reading what I was supposed to do for a long time, and in fact, I missed the switch to call the elevator, which was even worse. It was
wow, yeah.
I ran all the way around the area, and I'm like, okay, I'm just dodging this thing, and I spent a lot of ammo trying to shoot it because I thought, since I hadn't found anything else to do, I was like, okay, well, I guess when I dodge, I got to shoot immediately, and to try to hit it. Because it was coming up from below, it was coming down from above. I'm like, okay, this is just a dodge, shoot, and I was like, after a while, I'm like, nothing's happening.
Yeah.
And so I went back through the whole thing again. I was like, oh, I missed this tiny little side room where there's this switch.
Yeah.
Dang it. But at that point I was so low on ammo and health that I had to redo the whole section. But I didn't hate it. That was badly communicated. I didn't hate the experience otherwise, like knock over these liquid nitrogen things while he's frozen, shoot him a bunch in the face with a shotgun if you can, and that was fine. But there was so much QTE timing that you'd miss a lot, and it just ate up a lot of resources for not a lot of payoff. It was like an arena that didn't work. I figure you can. I imagine if you got all the liquid nitrogen and got the most out of every one of them, you probably could kill him.
I felt like he was just a nemesis kind of character, and I just assumed you couldn't kill him. I didn't even try actually at one point. I feel like there might have been a little bit of feedback shooting him that felt like a ricochet or something, but maybe you could, yeah. But it's just it's you're waiting for the elevator for 4 minutes, and then you're just running in circles, QTEing. I did find a bit of a mini exploit where I could run around the circular path in that small room in a way where it wouldn't trigger the QTEs. He just was missing me. So I could do that I burned a lot of time that way. But I don't know. It's just a, it's the resetting expectations where they haven't had enemies other than bosses, but all the bosses you get to kill anyway that are like this,
you can kill it. And wow. you get a part of the crown.
Oh, okay.
Well, so you get this crown jewel, and then you can insert it in this crown, and it more than doubles in value. And then if you make it the whole Salazar family crown, which I got the other part, you get another.
Got it. So. Well, then I guess I just wish that the telegraphing was better then, because I feel like when you're doing damage to him, he doesn't flinch. He doesn't do anything to give me an indication that I am doing damage. I'm already fairly frustrated with the fact that none of the bosses have any sort of damage indication. They don't have a health bar, and they also don't seem to show through the model or the animations or the visual effects how much health they have left. So it's sort of like I'm just shooting them until they die at some point. So you don't know how well you're doing. And this guy's worse because it's he doesn't give you any feedback.
Yeah.
I
figured he was killable, but I also, after I knocked over a liquid nitrogen tank, and was like, oops, he's nowhere near me. I just wasted that. Yeah. I was like, oh no, let me run to the elevator now.
Yeah, I just got out of there. I used all there's a side room that you can get some liquid nitrogen. So maybe, that I did do, cause he's so fast. I assumed you had to use that one, but yeah, I think I died 2 times or so on that. But at one point I'm like, yeah, forget this. I'm just going to run. So I don't know. Interesting that you can kill him. Maybe some rocket launchers and some, heavily up.
Yeah. Probably. I always have so many grenades that I'm like, maybe I should just be using those more. Although I did burn a lot of the incendiaries, he said, burn the incendiaries, taking out those 2 dudes with the blind dudes with the things on their back. In that one room, and I was like, oh wow, I have a ton of flash grenades. as always, but I had a lot fewer other grenades, and maybe I should have used that there. It's just,
Yeah, that's true. And grenades could have.
There might be systemic stuff, or I don't know. It's not really systemic, but damage type stuff there of like use the fire because he's ice. When you freeze him or something like that. I don't know. There's probably some pro strats that we could use for that. The other highlight for me was really the robot Salazar.
Yeah, it was neat. It was neat that was a combination. It was a combination of a bunch of different elements of the game, right? There's navigation puzzles, there's like changing what the robot's doing, and then it also becomes a set piece and kind of a little boss kind of section.
It's also QTE. Just hilarious. This tiny little guy is suddenly this giant thing chasing you. I mean, it's just it's a little on the nose in some ways because it's so ridiculous. Of like, he's been your big antithesis this whole chapter and the chapter before. But I did really, really appreciate it. And as soon as I walked in there, I was like, oh, I think this is a whole thing. Like, because it's so garish and I love jumping. It's also, go ahead.
I was just gonna say jumping all around the body, right? Like you just get this sense of, it's something important. Yeah.
But also as a developer, I look at that and I'm like, man, they built this character and then they get to make a giant statue out of him where they basically swap a material, change out the joints a little bit, because it was like disjointed, and they get a whole thing out of it. And I'm like, that is very economical. Kind of, it's not economical design really, because it's just, just making a set piece. So they have to kind of script a thing, but there's not a lot of design there, but it's also just like, wow, they get to really get the most out of the Salazar character. And they continue to, because the next thing really after that, I guess, is the tower.
Well, it also, by the way, the statue fits him really well, right? It feels like something he would make, right? It's like
he'd make a monument to himself.
It's in character, right? And you want to hate him even more, really.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's very true. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's pretty glorious. I mean, Salazar is way more an interesting character so far than Sadler is, right? Who we have yet to really battle.
Yeah, Sadler's kind of boring, really.
Yeah. Like I don't know, he's got something going on under that robe of his, but like, he's not. And even like, I mean, Mendez has his set piece, but it's not as interesting as Salazar's. Salazar so far has been a real high point.
He's a good nemesis.
Constant taunting and
yeah. They allowed you to talk to him over your codec, which is a difference from the guy in the village section, right? The big guy,
right?
Because you don't really get a sense of him very much because you see him a couple of times, but he doesn't really talk very much. He's just a big brute. Is the mine car? The mine car might be before the giant.
It's before the giant robot. Yeah, we should talk about the mine car because we both had a similar frustration there. So I was absolutely loving the mine car section. I was like, oh, this is really great. It feels really tense. I'm jumping back and forth. There's these 3 mine cars. For people who don't know, you get into them. For a moment, I was like, what do I do next? I can't jump out and turn the switch. I was like, oh, duh, just shoot the thing.
Yeah.
And then you start this mine car section where you're in this cart and there's Gigantes jumping into the cart. You can shoot them down if you can kind of target ahead of you, shoot them down into the tracks, and you don't even have to worry about them. But inevitably, some will get into the cart with you, or one of the 3 carts, and you'll be shooting some, but you're also in close quarters with others. I mean, it's a great management of your ammo. But yeah, I mean, it's really good, intense, and awesome. You get to a section where it's like things are moving really fast. It's hard to get a bead on the last guys, and then you jump off a cliff. And there's a QTE, which I immediately failed.
Yeah, me too.
It's the worst. It's the worst. It is.
And what's more is like there's the, you jump off and you're hanging on and they want you to pound. For me, it was pounding a button really quickly.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, well, I'm playing the PS4 version.
I just accidentally pressed another button while I was pounding that button.
No.
So it wasn't even I was doing anything wrong. It was just my thumb kind of rolled a little bit and I hit another button in the middle of it, so it was even more like dumb.
Oh, that's the worst. Well, no, I was just unprepared for it. I expected just a cutscene, and like it came off, and I was like, "Oh no!" And it was too late, and Leon just I'm like, "Oh no!" And then I played it again. I mean, I still didn't enjoyed it a second time, but also the whole time was going, oh, "Are you kidding me?" Yeah, I've already done all of this. Like, it was cool the first time. Why am I doing it again? Because I missed this thing I had no context for that was coming. I don't know. They just having some sort of signaling would be really helpful. I mean, and it's not like there aren't prior examples of that sort of thing. Like, Dragon's Lair, 86, had a flash. Like, this is where you're going to go. This is your next thing. There's a flash. Go that direction, right? Just some sort of indication a QTE is coming, be ready, would be enough for me. That's all I really want at this point, is just signaling to indicate it's coming. Like, that was one thing, I think about Republic Commando and like not wanting players to miss the fact that they're going to leave the level. We like gave them a big indicator, like, oh, here, this is the end of the level. Like, ding, ding, ding. Like, this is the thing, so that people weren't frustrated. Which is the same year, I guess, technically shipping wise, right? Yeah. So it's it's just like
hand it to them. So there's no reason. Yeah. And it's
Or be more generous. Be more generous with the window would also be fine. Yeah. I guess it's unfair. Either one.
Comes down to feeling unfair. Yeah.
So we both had that experience, and it was I'm glad we got to bond over that, Tim.
Did you want to, right after that section or near to that is the two giant guys and the lava pit thing?
Let's talk about that. I think we only really talked about that in pre-show, I guess.
I think so.
In terms I think that's right. Yeah. Because I was skipping all of it. That was the lava room I thought you were talking about before. So I guess the last thing before the robot, really the last sort of set piece, is the room with two El Gigantes. Who were they armored up differently? It felt like they had something covering their face. They were a little different. Yeah. But it's a big circular room, or mostly circular room, with some stuff on the periphery, and then like this huge grate over the lava in the floor, and a ladder to a really like tall scaffolding or shelving unit on the far side of the room when you come in. And on the top of that, if you go to the very top, you can swing down on a cable, like you would do in a lot of action games, but it's more it's built in a zip line. Yeah. Good word. So you kind of explore this whole room. You're like, I don't know what the deal is here. And the only other thing you can do, I guess, I don't know what triggers them to come in. Do you remember?
It's just because I did die a few times on that one. It's just proximity to the door. It just is.
Okay.
It's just a
so you're like, you go around this little playground room. You're like, what's going on? Well, I guess I'll just try to leave. And they burst in through the door. And there's two El Gigantes. And it's like, oh, two El Gigantes. Huh. And at this point, I had explored that whole room. And when they came in, I was like, oh, obviously. Like I knew that you could open the floor.
You figured the puzzle out. You just need to execute the puzzle. Good job.
Exactly. I was like, oh, well, I figured out how to do the rocks. This will be easy. And I went and I was like, okay, let me go open. Oh, the grate's open. Never mind. I don't even have to do that. I'll go climb the ladder. El Gigantes came over and they were like coming over. And actually, if you're up on top there, they'll shake it and you fall off. So I was up there and it's like, as soon as they came near, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to swing down this zip line. I'm going to knock them into the lava. And I swing down that zip line and the lava enclosure closes. And I'm like, what?
So which I think was just by chance that it closed as you were going over it.
Yeah, almost entirely. Yeah. But then I was like, oh, okay, let me open. It must have been because I went and I opened this and then I climbed up and then I came back down. Or I took the zip line down and then I went to the door and they came in. Oh, okay, maybe it's a time thing. Like I have to do it in the right timing. So I tried it again. But because I'm like, oh, I need to open it, climb the zip line, and then I knock them in, but it's been open. Like, it's just a timing thing. And so I do it again. And I'm just like, what is going on? And now they're walking around the lava pit. And I'm like, no. So the third time, finally, I'm like, oh, I gotta not open it and swing down? Ugh. It just, I don't know. It was kind of let down after the plan I made in my head, which was way cooler, which is like,
right.
I used their physics against them, like the fact that they've got, I don't know, this lower center of gravity, and so I can leverage, kicking them in the head to knock them over. Yeah. Like, it looks so great in my head. Like, I mean,
it would have been cool. Yeah, especially
it's funny. It so enables a plan. Like, it felt like such an obvious plan. Yeah, so before I smashed my hand into my space bar, I was talking about zip lines. Yeah, so that is one thing about set pieces that is frustrating, is like, there's only one solution. There's not a lot of room for creativity.
Yeah. And this was definitely the era of set pieces. We talked about God of War, which I think is the previous year or somewhere around here.
Is this 2004
years? Yeah. And so it's and
no,
QTEs.
or 2000. Yeah, it's 2005. Yeah. So, and you've got Uncharted Drake's Fortune coming up, which has a lot of set pieces, right? And that might be later this year or the next year or something along those lines, right? You've got, I mean, this is definitely, like you said, it's that era, and it's going to dominate probably the next several years of, like, how do you pull off these larger than life situations? And, this is to some degree a forerunner of a lot of that. It's not new. Like, and there's always been, boss fights or whatever that have their own thing that you got to do, and it's very prescribed. And I don't know, in that moment, see them, though, I think I had a total creative plan, and I was like,
yeah, it's funny. It's a good story because it's a good example of when expectations are wrong, how it can make it actually a less cool experience because you thought it was going to be something way cooler, and then it ended up not being. For me, because my expectations, as soon as I got in there, I've thought of what I wanted to do, and that was what it was supposed to be. My expectations weren't too high. My expectations were just exactly what I was supposed to. So it's just funny how you got to be careful with those sorts of designs to make sure that you're not giving them the impression that something different is going to happen, so it's a tricky thing. One small thing that you may or may not have experienced, though, if you once you get the first one in there, or the one that I think you can only do one of them can fall inside. Once you get him in there, if you don't wait long enough for him to die, or maybe the thing closes and you walk up near to the pool, he, in his burning form, grabs you. He insta-kills you by pulling you into the lava with him.
Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah. So I was like, I ran over there because I wanted to see him die. Basically, I wanted to see what was happening, and he grabs you. And it's like,
oh my god!
So it's like that's a little little optional moment that maybe a lot of people won't even see, but the fact that they thought of it, like.
It's also kind of a joke, right? I mean, it's kind of like, haha, you wanted to gloat, and like, I'm gonna, that's pretty good. I assume that you could also, like, so there is some sort of systemic approach to that room. You could kill them both just with guns.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be worth, twice as many pesetas or whatever. I mean, those things are worth quite a lot, like $15,000 or something. So there would be a benefit. There's a trade-off there to make. And actually, I could understand, like, that being the motivation for going up to the edge. Like, let me go up and kill it while it's in there, or, see if I can get them drop or whatever. So,
that's a good point.
Yeah,
I wonder, you must get, I mean, you could maybe even get something fancier if you kill both of them, like a gem or something for one of the treasures.
Yeah, so, maybe. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things, there's a lot here. Okay. And then, so we already talked about Robot Salazar. I guess the last big thing is the tower that leads up to the final Salazar encounter, let's say. And he's the tower was good. There's one thing in particular I really liked about it, and it was once I had fought my way up past the barrels, you could
Donkey Kong.
Yeah, the Donkey Kong section. You could climb up to where they were releasing the barrels, and when all the new guys came in, you could release the barrels yourself.
Oh, really? Oh, that's brilliant. I didn't even think of that. That's a great idea.
It's hilarious. So it's like, I mean, I was like trying to time it, and I was watching and they're all down. There's a bunch of them down there.
Yeah, why didn't I think of that? That's so obvious.
It's really hilarious. I mean, it's just really, they all come charging in, and you're watching over the edge, and I don't know if there's like a crossbow guy. So you like kind of back up, and then you kind of turn. Oh, and there's a switch on the wall. You're like, huh. So that was something I really appreciated. Then there's a real challenge section of like you're in the elevator itself, and there's just tons of those red robes coming in, and they're tough to kill to begin with. And they're in close quarters. And it's sort of like the blind one in the cage from last week or whatever. And it's just so tight.
You're not using the shotgun very much, right? Or do you?
Oh no, I think my shotgun is all the way upgraded.
Okay. I was going to say because I didn't find them too bad because of that gun, but
I might have been really low on shotgun ammo though at that point.
Yeah, very likely the case. Yeah. I was as well, but I did have enough. But yeah, once that whole sequence was gone, and the section that that was way long ago. But there were a few sections where not obviously the elevator, because that's you can't get away from that area. But I just would run. I did not spend a lot of time killing everybody that I saw. Like I would actually flashbang and then run by people.
Oh, interesting. Oh yeah. I'm not that way at all. I'm like, I want to kill everybody. And I will exhaust ammo doing it. And I think the game is well tuned to support either. I mean, I think the original Resident Evil was very like, you want to get past those zombies. It's okay. Just, you know what? Run past them. Use your knife. They're slow. And this game, it feels like because they drop a fair amount of loot, it's pretty forgiving to kill everything if you can do it, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, so then basically after that, we get to him, right?
Yeah.
The boss fight.
He becomes a multi-part thing, like, because I think his other...
Well, first of all, we have to talk about yet another big plant creature looking thing. I mean, I feel like, remember, we've talked about this on so many of the games we've played, like around the early aughts, it was just like so many big... I mean, this wasn't maybe completely a plant, but it's just another one of those big hive mind kind of creature things that feels like everyone was doing in the late 90s, early aughts. And this, I was just not surprised to see this thing on the wall that basically ate both of them and then turned them into this monster. I don't know. It's just like yet another.
It's actually, I think it's actually 3 parts. I think it's the thing from down below that you don't kill, I think is rejoining him, and is the big arms. And then there's the eyeball thing, which is like the guy that was with him the whole time. And then Salazar himself.
Yeah.
I think
there was a combination happening that was loosely explained. I mean, they get eaten or whatever by it,
yeah, right. They sort of get absorbed into it, and maybe they join with it, or maybe it's hard to say. I mean, don't think too hard about that, I suppose.
No, I mean, it was very the thing, in its design, right? It was just like you see body parts combined, and there's like a rib cage as a skeleton, as a mouth, and I don't know, different. This was very late at night for me last night that I was finally got to this point, and I was like, maybe I just won't finish this tonight. And Because it was just, I think, mainly being tired because I knew what I needed to do, but the execution of it. And again, the QTEs being integrated into the sequence of events was just not my favorite because it's like, yeah, but that's like, I know what I need to do, but I have no control over the QTEs. So it's like, I just have to really pay attention.
The thing is that I didn't have many QTEs at all. And the reason was when I thought they were coming, I jumped off the edge.
Yeah.
I jumped down, got back on the ladder, and ran right back up and started shooting the eye thing again.
So you had enough time to do that. I thought of that afterwards, after killing him.
I did have enough time to do it. Yeah. And so I did have to dodge once or twice, but I had a couple of first aid sprays or something at that point. So even missing one or two was not a huge deal. The bigger deal was the eyeball. Like if you shoot it a bunch, it opens into a mouth.
That's
if you don't shoot it enough, and that'll kill you as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
So you have to get out of the way. But man, it was so satisfying to kill that guy. Like I was using the rifle, so I'm like seeing him really up close and personal, and just like, man, I'm zooming in all the way because I just want to see his agony. It was a lot though. Like that was a lot of.
It was
effort.
Long. Yeah.
It took a while. And whenever I went down, I actually went down first for a while, like, okay, what do I do? And there's just tons of insects the thinnest sort of version of the insects. Yeah, they're low to the ground. I mean, they drop ammo and stuff, so it's not terrible, but it's also can wear you down. So you have to be careful not to get stuck down there for too long. And when I was starting to be like, okay, I'm starting to flag. Like I'm just like my own personal, not Leon, but I'm just starting to get tired dealing with these little things. I was like, I gotta try to press the attack. It took me 3 tries, I think, to defeat him. Mostly because I was just, one time was cheap shot, shot the eye a bunch of times. The mouth didn't connect with a couple, and the mouth opened and just snapped me up. I'm like, oh, okay, so I got that to worry about. And another time I wasn't really minding my health and just ate it to the, one of the QTEs I missed. And then I was like, okay, I got the rhythm. And I was like, I'm going to do it one more time. And I was like, and at that point I'm like, I don't know how long this is going to take. Like, I don't know what's next. I don't know, it made sense that a chapter boundary was coming soon after, but I also was like, I don't know what else to expect at this point. So yeah.
Well,
it was a decent boss battle though.
Yeah, it was fine. I think the one sort of this boss design thing that I wanted to mention was more about the game. I guess largely, I think what they're trying to do is force you to jump down as your sort of evasion tactic. But the boss was designed in such a way where it is a lot about evading. But there isn't a mechanical evade. It's either QTEs or contextual jumping down. And I generally didn't want to deal with the insects. So I didn't want to jump down. So when the big mouth thing happened, it was cumbersome because what I would do was turn and run.
Oh, wow.
So I could stay on the level basically. Right. And you didn't have to run too far, but you had to do it quickly. Right. And it's tank control. So it's very cumbersome to do it. So it just felt like the way that I was playing it, at least I was fighting the design. I was kind of playing in an unintended way because I didn't want to go down there. I think they were trying to encourage you to jump, down at those times or use the QTEs. So anyway, yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, but I had a fully upgraded red 6, whatever that
red 9,
gun, red 9. Yeah. So and I just, I was just laying, just pouring. And it's because I have the stock on it, as that one listener suggested. It's doesn't wobble very much, and so I was just laying into him that way. And it was very much that like, because I had I was playing after everyone went to bed, so it was pretty late by the time I got to this point, like very late. And I was like, okay, I died 3 or 4 times, and I was like, okay, I should stop, but I'll just do it one more time.
Yeah,
and that was the time. That
was the time. Yeah.
So it was gratifying, but then it's like, oh, your princess is in another castle, and I was like, really, like really, is that?
Yeah.
And then they introduce this whole other character, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, next time. But it's who is this guy?
Yeah.
So now, and that's where I wrote down, Metal Gear.
Klaus. Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid is seeping into Resident Evil at this point, I feel like. And there's other things, the codec, and so we'll talk about it next time. But I did. It was gratifying to take him down finally, for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was such a nemesis for so long. I mean, he's probably more than half the game at this point, up to this point, of just like running into him again and again, and he's laughing at you and he's taunting you, and he's got all these traps, and like there was a room that he trapped you in with the spikes from the ceiling we didn't even talk about, and he's just like, he's just like, this son of a gun, like, I gotta get him, and I think that all pays off really, really well. And in fact, it makes me feel like, how do they top that? Like, because I'm not connected to any other enemies all that much at this point. I mean, I still have Ashley to get, right? And, so I there's a definite impulse to go forward. Like I want to finish and finish that fight. But
Sadler, right?
Yeah. But Sadler's like, I mean, I didn't really know Luis that well, right? So that didn't land. He wasn't my mission. I didn't really know what his deal was. We had 2 cutscenes and a set piece. It's like, but nothing else has really kind of landed in that way.
Well, and the fact that there even is an island, right? That there is this location to go to that wasn't alluded to. It feels a bit tacked on so far. I did play the beginning of it, or I just let the cutscene play essentially, and there was kind of at least a little bit of a nice intro to it. But otherwise, it'd be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, I didn't even do that because I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I've got other things to do now. Anyway, well, we were going to do email, but we're we're around an hour and 15 minutes already. So I actually want to just close out instead. Thank you for sending your emails and your reviews, devgameclub@gmail.com and Apple Podcasts or whatever you use to listen to podcasts. But it is Thanksgiving week here in the States, and I want to say thank you to my co-host, because we've been doing this almost 6 years.
Jesus.
And it's a pleasure to do this every week with you. It's something I'm thankful for. I play more games and more thoughtfully than I probably would have in that time. And so this is something that's it's enriched me, over the past, 285 episodes, apparently. So,
holy cow.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you. I'm gracious as well. And it's same for me. It's a joy and just a weird side thing that we're doing, and we've been doing this whole time, and I'm still flabbergasted that we are still doing it. And I think, and RE4 is a really good game, and I think it's a good example of what I've enjoyed about the series, because it has been fun to play it and to talk about it with you. And so, I appreciate it. And I thank you back.
Of course. All right. Well, and of course, thank you to all of you for listening. Like I said, reviews, email at devgameclub@gmail.com. You can find us on the web at devgameclub.com or on Twitter at devgameclub, where you can also find my co-host at
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
He's not streaming this week, but Monday nights you can find him streaming currently Control. How's the Ashtray Maze going, by the way?
I got a little distracted last session. I decided to do some side stuff that
will happen.
Yeah,
that will happen,
because I feel like I did get the final ability, the shield.
Oh, you did? Yeah. Oh man, that was the hardest section for me to do. I don't know if it was a controller thing or
yeah. It was difficult. Yeah. And so now I have all the abilities, and now I've gone full circle, and I'm back. I've talked to Ati, and I've had a very cool sequence with him.
He's cool.
Which I won't spoil. And then now I'm back at the Ashtray Maze and ready to go.
Cool.
To finally be able to do it. So
cool.
I was confused. Cool. It's really weird that they let you go there before you need to go there. So but anyway.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of places where that's true. Like, there's probably a lot of places you can go before you need to, story-wise. So it is And then you can backtrack a lot. So it's also...
Yeah.
Formally, there's probably some real issues there. We'll talk about it in maybe 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not.
When we get to episode, 892. Anyway, you can find him there at twitch.tv/Tim Longo Jr., also with the JR at the end. A couple other people we're thankful for. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast, Aaron Evers. Our logo and our photoshops are by Mark Garcia. Have fun visiting the Temple of Doom this week, and good night.
Good night.